The two buildings at 112 and 116 South Pecan Street in Hico, Texas, were built in the early 1890s. More than 100 years later, John and Ellen McStay restored these old buildings to their original beauty, doing their part to preserve the past in this small Texas community. Hico is a friendly town about 2 hours southwest of Dallas, located at the intersection of Highway 281 and Highway 6. It was founded in 1856 on Honey Creek, a stream flowing into the Bosque River about 2.5 miles south of the present-day town. When the Texas Central Railroad came through northern Hamilton County in 1880, the wise citizens of Hico decided to relocate the fledgling town north to the spot where the tracks ran through the countryside. In an instant, this strategic move transformed the quiet streets of Hico into a booming railroad town. On November 11, 1880, an auction was held to sell the first lots for the new location of Hico. As envisioned, the town quickly prospered due to its proximity to the railroad and to a rapidly expanding agricultural industry based on cotton. Unfortunately, just 10 years later, in 1890, the new town was virtually destroyed by fire. Again, the wise townspeople made a strategic decision. They would rebuild, but this time with rock and brick structures. The wisdom of this decision became fully apparent in 1908 when the town was devastated by heavy rains that brought the Bosque River out of its banks and flooded the city. However, the rock and brick buildings held up well, and Pecan Street has endured the test of time. The creativity and genius of Hico's early designers has given us a town with architectural characteristics that are as unique today as they were in the 19th century. In the early days of Hico, cotton was king. Just 25 years after its founding, the town had become a bustling center of commerce. In 1880, there were approximately 6,900 acres farmed in cotton, whereas by 1910, cotton cultivation covered 79,000 acres. Wheat and corn were big too, as were sheep and cattle ranching. The Texas Central Railroad caused the town to be a major shipping hub. It's fascinating to look at photographs from this era. One would not expect to find such prosperity and high society in a small Texas town. There were men and women wearing fine clothes and attending performances at the Opera House. There was an arts community and restaurants. Hico was something of a mini metropolis. However, this period of prosperity would not last, as two competing rail lines came through the area in 1907, linking other neighboring towns and lessening Hico's commercial advantage. Also around this time, a devastating boll weevil infestation was moving across all of Texas. Hico was hit hard. Growth in Hico began to stagnate. Circumstances might have eventually turned around for Hico, but when the Great Depression hit, the town's fate was sealed. In spite of Hico's early, bustling history, the town got quieter and smaller and became just another one of the hundreds of little Texas towns that you can just pass right through without giving it another thought, on your way from one place to another. But it's Hico's location as a pass-through town that has kept it alive. For many Texas travelers, Hico is a friendly gateway to the hill country and a delightful, alternate scenic route to Austin, San Antonio, Marble Falls, and Fredericksburg. And that's the way Hico was when John and Ellen McStay found it in the late 1980s. The Dallas couple was looking for a place where they could buy some land and build a weekend place. The McStays were looking for a peaceful getaway within a 2-hour circle around Dallas that would offer diverse topography, fresh water, trees, wildlife, and scenic Texas vistas. They knew they'd found something special when they saw Hico, a quiet town with a population of just 1,300, with a well-known eatery called the Coffee Cup, famous for its mile-high meringue pies. It soon became apparent that Hico was a warm and friendly town with a colorful history. Ironically, there has been a positive side to the town's lack of growth since the early 1900s. The buildings on the main streets of town have remained basically unchanged. The stone buildings, with their remarkable architecture and workmanship, are as beautiful and fresh today as they were over 100 years ago. One of the stone buildings on Pecan Street caught the McStays' attention when they noticed a for sale sign in the window. Their interest in this wonderful old structure was kindled. Despite all of the modern changes that had been made, they could tell that this building had great potential. After researching the history of the structure and looking at old pictures, the McStays realized they wanted to do more than just fix the building up. They began to form a plan to restore the building to its original condition and beauty. An immediate challenge was removing a second floor that had been added. The previous owner had split the first floor into 2 stories, leaving the original top story, now the 3rd story, still intact. The addition of a middle floor forced the new 1st and 2nd stories to have very low ceilings. This turned out to be a blessing in disguise, as the workmen were able to stand on the floor of the 2nd story and easily refurbish the ceiling of the original 1st floor. The ceiling was beadboard that had been painted many times. The ceiling was hand-scraped to reveal the original wood, leaving just enough white paint to accentuate the grooves and natural grain of the wood. The removal of the 2nd floor restored the 1st floor to its original height of 16 feet. The 1st floor had initially been established as 2 separate retail spaces. In order to create one continuous open space, a dividing rock wall was partially removed. These rocks were used to construct 2 load-bearing stone columns. Steel reinforcements and an enormous 150-year-old wooden beam helped support the tall ceiling. Central heat and air were added, and all of the wiring and plumbing were replaced. The air conditioning ductwork that runs along the 1st floor ceiling was concealed with beadboard, salvaged from the back office and storage room. All of the interior rock walls had been covered with plaster. The plaster was removed to expose the original rock, which uncovered a new problem. The 100-year-old mortar was very porous due to a high limestone content. The exposed mortar could actually be flaked away with a fingernail, creating a very messy, dusty environment. The mortar was repointed, a process that chips away the mortar, going about 1.5 inches deep into the wall. A new, harder mortar is mixed and repacked into the spaces between the rocks. This was performed on every interior wall. Most of the original pine floors were in good condition, but about 25% of the flooring needed to be pulled up and replaced. The restoration team resourced and salvaged wood from other old buildings to finish the floors. Outside, a shingled awning had been installed over the doors in the 1950s. When the awning was removed, it was a bonus to discover that the original glass windows, once exposed, were still in excellent condition. The original front doors had been replaced with standard doors made of commercial metal and glass. Remarkably, the original solid wood doors were found stored in a building across the street. They were not in good enough condition to use, but they were still intact enough to serve as a pattern for creating new ones. The windows upstairs had been replaced with smaller, inexpensive metal-framed windows. Those were removed, and custom-built wood-framed windows were stained and installed to duplicate the look of the original frames. The exterior decorative iron posts and ledges were fabricated by the Mosier Steel Company of Dallas. These were still in place, but required sandblasting and painting to further add to the authenticity of the building. A narrow retail space had been created in 1905 by sealing off the adjacent alley. In order to access this space, 3 archways were created in the common wall. The acquired space is now an art gallery featuring paintings, sculptures, and photography, all by Texas artists. When the restoration was complete, 2 retail areas were established: Blue Star Trading and Ranch Outfitters. Blue Star Trading is a fun store with an eclectic collection of jewelry, purses, clothing, housewares, books, and gifts. The store enjoys an interesting mix of customers. About 25% of the traffic is local citizens. The rest is weekenders and pass-through visitors on the scenic route to Austin or somewhere else. Partner and proprietor Becky Holt does a fine job of buying items to appeal to this unique customer base. Also in this space is Ranch Outfitters, a rugged store for ranchers and horsemen in the area. Here they'll find hunting essentials, knives, and clothing, as well as an extensive tack store showcasing saddles, ropes, and other equestrian items. The second floor has been set up as an office space where John and ranch manager Britt Holt can attend to the business of running the Morning Star Ranch. The Blue Star project was completed in August of 2000. It had been a big job, so John and Ellen weren't necessarily interested in doing it all again. However, their newly restored building adjoins a similar structure, both built at the same time around 1895. When that building went on the market in late 2006, the McStays thought it would be nice to own and control the twin buildings. The exterior of the other building appeared to be in good shape, and it was assumed that this restoration would be similar. The building had originally been home to the Petty Brothers Mercantile Company, a prominent business in Hico for 5 decades. In the 1940s, a fire had destroyed the mezzanine and part of the second floor, effectively blocking access to the store's vault. In a sense, the vault became a sealed time capsule for almost 60 years. Opening the vault revealed a small safe containing clues to the history of the Petty Brothers and their store. A treasure trove of ledgers, bills of sale, and receipts allow us to imagine the day-to-day life of running this business. Here is a receipt for some patterns Mr. Petty ordered from New York, some hats from St. Louis, some lace from the Pacific Button Company in Los Angeles. Here we see that on April 7th, he bought 24 pairs of Mexican huaraches from an importer in Laredo for $1.70 a pair. They must have sold well because about a month later, he took delivery on 41 pairs from a Houston importer who beat the Laredo price by 25 cents a pair. The Pettys even sold tractors and automobiles. The discovery of a stock certificate issued in 1907 revealed the Petty Brothers Mercantile to be a publicly traded company. Their stationery was exceptional, with a wonderfully ornate letterhead. The back of the envelopes featured a photo of the building and the Petty Brothers motto, Hico's greatest department store. Buy and sell everything for the farm, home, and ranch. It seems Blue Star Trading is providing the same service to the community. Even in the 21st century, the steady history of the building continues, as steadfast and permanent as its rugged stone construction. While the exterior of the building required a minimal amount of work, the interior turned out to be another matter. Inside, this building was in much worse shape than had first been thought. The mezzanine and the upper floor, which had incurred so much fire damage, would need complete reconstruction. In addition, it became apparent that all of the wood ceilings and floors would have to be replaced. There were even some support beams that needed to be rebuilt and replaced. The job of restoring the Petty building was growing, but the McStays were determined to remain as faithful and as authentic to the original construction as possible. It wasn't easy, but the contractor was able to find enough salvage materials to allow for a seamless restoration. The ceiling and floors now appear as though they could have been part of the original construction. The mezzanine was recreated and, based on old photos, custom railings and supports were built to match the original design. The large staircase leading up to the mezzanine was redesigned to ease the flow of visitors to the mezzanine. The first floor of the Petty Brothers building is now Blue Star Home, a shop with a discriminating shopper in mind. Visitors will find all kinds of wonderful items for the home: furnishings, rugs, lamps, handcrafted pillows, and custom upholstered sofas and chairs. The mezzanine provides space for merchandising, as well as access to the vault and a view through one of the windows of the old elevator shaft. The second floor is an exhibit space of 6,000 square feet, which shows a part of Hico's interesting history. At the turn of the last century, a nationally known professional photographer named Frank Wiseman made his home in Hico. His images, many of which were used in this video, tell the full story of Hico's early history. The collection of photos has been chronologically arranged into an exhibit called A Pictorial Retrospective of Early Hico. Visitors can see Hico as it was, at its peak when cotton was king, and can track the town's development from 1880 to 1930. Part of this exhibit features a section of the old Hico post office, some Petty Brothers artifacts from the safe, and plats of the town created in 1907 by the Sanborn Map Company, 11 Broadway, New York City. At that time, Hico's population was 3,500 people and supported many businesses including factories, hotels, churches, grocery stores, and an opera house. The Blue Star buildings were built in approximately 1895, and now the McStays see themselves not so much as the owners, but as the current caretakers of these wonderful old buildings. Their spaces have been home to a restaurant, grocery store, auto service shop, hen house, antique store,